So our oldest, Harrison, learned to read very early. I'm saying was probably started somewhere around maybe 3.5 or 4, and he picked up on it pretty fast. He learned to gain words by kind of memorizing the words, I think, if I remember right, something like that. But he was reading books like he picked the Harry Potter series. We loved that series at the time. I can remember the excitement around each book that would come out, and he would just chew them up basically as far as reading them and getting them done quickly. And I was just so amazed. He was an amazing kid. All my kids are actually. And so he learned very quickly how to read and was doing it very early. So when our second child came along, Abby, I thought, well, at about 3.5, I thought, well, we should be getting her to read. It's time. Harrison was at 3. Why can't she be at 3? And so I started to. Of course, we always read to our kids. Every night we would read stories. Some stories we'd have to read over and over and over again, but we would read to them. And I think that's where they got the joy of reading, was from us reading to them. But when Abby came along, I figured she needed to start reading at about 3. So I was trying to put books in front of her. I was trying to get her to start reading. And I remember approaching you, Gina, and saying, don't you think it's about time she starts to read? We need to get some books and get it in front of her and do some. And I remember you saying, no, we will start when she is ready to take it on. Well, of course, I didn't believe that. And I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. So I would try to go in there and say, okay, come on, let's try to, and I would try to get her to do it. I didn't do too much of that, but um, as you said, it was when she was ready, she would read. And so for her, I think it started when she was about 5, if I remember, somewhere around there, maybe a little 5.5. So she started to get some interest. Once she got interest in it, then she was the same way. She was just gobble them up and read them. And she read the Harry Potter books and all that. So it kind of showed me how important it is to address, learning by when they're ready to learn whatever it is they need to learn, whether it's reading, English, math, whatever, is to wait. And so it was a good lesson for me. And so on the third child, I know I let I let her do it as she was ready. I didn't try to push it. So,
Well, hello, this is Gina
and this is Don.
with Focused Healthy Family. And this is podcast number 56. And today we're talking about child-led learning. But before we get started on that topic, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, and find out more information there.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences. And we're back. So today we're doing something different. We're going to talk about child-led learning.
For our audience out there to understand that Gina and I right now are in 2 separate locations. So we usually do this together. So there may be a little bit of hesitations here and there because we don't cue ourselves as well with being remote.
And some glitchiness as I'm hearing a lag. And But we'll work through it anyhow. So
Yeah.
child-led learning, what is that? What does that mean? What does it look like? Is it just for homeschoolers? We do homeschool our kids. And we kind of got into that because our oldest, like you described, was it kind of advanced as far as, he didn't really sound out words. He memorized. You told him what a word was, and he remembered what it looked like. And so he was able to put a lot of words together at a young age and then able to read. I remember you doing phonics with all of the kids. And some kids
sounded out.
Our youngest was able to do that. Our oldest, no.
Yeah.
Not at all. His was, he just literally memorized words. And these are all valid different ways of learning. And it's important that we work to our strengths. Think about yourself. If you haven't, like, I've been learning to crochet new stitches and be able to expand upon the initial scarves that I made. And I learn best by watching a YouTube video and going along and pausing it. There are patterns that describe the stitches. I can't follow that. I learn best by watching the video, and I'll slow it down and pause it. And I've learned from a YouTuber who is British. And so I've learned the UK terms. And so it throws me off when I hear the American.
Did you learn how to talk like that too?
Well, they have different terms. A double crochet is a treble crochet, and it's confusing.
Well, and you remember with our oldest, I think where it really started was street signs.
Oh yeah.
I think I started with him because I was home a little more than you were. I was home for our church sound. You were home, I think, more with the second one, and you would do the same thing. You would take the stroller with both of them and go around and always talk about the street signs.
You're taking credit for the street signs, because I remember.
Oh, well.
I remember he was an infant, and I would walk him, and I would just describe what I saw as we walked. Okay. There's a mailbox, there's a tree. And so I did it before he was born.
Well, I did it before we were even married. I'm curling my hair, by the way. So.
It's a fun little sketch on SNL with Kristen Wiig where they kind of outdo each other on things. So before we ramble on and on a little more, I'd like to read part of a blog post I wrote. I have a blog called Child-Led Learning. It's a WordPress blog, and I write all about different types of topics related to children and learning. And so I'm going to read from this. Things I have learned from my children.
That's a lot.
Okay.
Pauses.
I printed the page, and I didn't realize that at first there's all the tags before you get to. So I quoted the song, "Teach them well. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be." So I find beauty and truth in this song. I am familiar with Whitney Houston's version, yet my research found that it was written by Michael Masser and the late Linda Creed in 1976. So I believe the children are our future. I also believe that I have learned far more from my children than I could have ever teach them. My children have reminded me of who I truly am. Living alongside of them, I have found my way back to my true self. It is a journey. It is a process. I know my children have helped me along my journey. I believe our souls are connected. On a spiritual level, we guide each other and have connections far beyond our current human condition. I have learned many things from my children, and I continue to learn more every day. I have been a mother for over 25 years and look forward to all I will continue to learn from my children throughout our current lifetime together. And then I just literally list a list of things that I have learned from my children. So I'll read a couple of these and then we can discuss. Stop and slow down and pay attention to the things around you.
Slow down.
Reading together before bed is a good habit. Eat when you are hungry and sleep when you are tired. Hugs and kisses are good medicine. Laughter is the best medicine. Follow your passion. And I'm going to pause there.
Well, that last one is really important because that's really what this is about, is following the passion, you know.
And
like
even if your kids go to school, giving them the opportunity
Mhm.
to explore something that they have an interest in. And it doesn't have to look like a formal class. You know, with the internet, it can look like researching together with them, letting them find out information and listening, letting them share with you what they're learning, giving them opportunities to be around the interest, whatever it is. If it's photography, if it's theater, you know, acting, attending plays, going to places that have these different types of opportunities. over my words. But you know, we learn best when we're interested in what we're learning. And I love this quote. It says, forcing children to learn when they're not interested is like throwing marshmallows at their head and calling it eating.
Okay. I like that though. It's kind of fun. That would be fun.
Mess that up slightly, but yeah, when we're not engaged and interested in what we're learning, how much do we take in?
Well, and I also, I would add experiencing too, giving them the experience of being enwrapped in something, I think it's like going to places and doing things was part of that learning too, going to the nature center and experiencing the animals there, or the wildlife things that they had there. That experience is so much more powerful than even words can be.
Sure. Yeah. I remember I was reading about some program or some class where kids could learn about, fish and aquatic life. And I was at that point, our daughter had gone to Florida twice, once with her aunt and swam with dolphins. And then she went with the Girl Scout troop and swam with the manatees. And I remember thinking, that's so much better than reading a book about these same topics. We did a lot of field trips and the kids were younger. And we did it as a group. We went with other friends. And maybe they weren't interested in the field trip we attended. But if they were, we could take it further. We could learn more. We could dive in deeper into it. And realizing that, school is set up to be able to educate a lot of kids in a restricted space with restricted resources and trying to meet the needs of a lot of different kids at one time, when all of us learn differently. We have different strengths and different weaknesses. And I totally forgot what I was going to say.
A lot of gaps here today. Well, and I think it's been helpful being so involved in their wanting to do these things, and not, it wasn't just we said, okay, go do this, or send them off somewhere. We were doing it there with them. We were enveloping ourselves in it too, as well as them getting involved.
And many parents are active in kids' school, attending field trips, attending other activities with them. And I guess where I was going with my point was realizing we all have different strengths and different ways of learning. And that's why some kids, it helps to have a tutor for them to learn something one-on-one that they might be struggling with in school, or having some extra activities to enhance that and give them those opportunities. And before I forget, I want to say it's also important that kids have downtime. The kids have time to be bored. It's so easy to be overscheduled and go from school to, after school activity, whether it's robotics or gymnastics or a sport or clubs and activities. And then you've got gatherings with families, and, they can have so much of their time
Yeah.
scheduled.
Well,
And
the quiet time allows them to think and doubt and question and explore.
not just quiet, but yeah, think
Well,
about
yeah,
back
just
in
their
the
own
60s,
time.
70s, going outside and just playing with neighbors and making things up. Boredom fosters creativity and curiosity and being able to explore. And a kid who takes something apart, you can get angry at them that they just dismantled the clock or the computer or whatever, or you can provide them with the opportunity to explore, like, oh, you like taking things apart, well, in the future,
Oh,
I'd like you to ask me before you take this apart. But you
before
know
you,
what? I've
next time, before you take the car apart, you want to read more from your list?
Why, sure. So, things I have learned from my children: be who you are and don't apologize for it. Speak the truth, speak your truth. How we talk to people matters as much as what we say to them. Respect is a two-way street. If you love to dance, then dance as much as you can. Reading a great book is more fun when you read along with friends. And Satoshi Tajiri created Pokemon. So
You probably put in that list about Toyota too, and who started Toyota.
we did some different activities, some on our own, some with a group of friends. We were in kind of cooperative learning opportunities with friends from a young age. And we participated in an activity where each family took a different country and learned different things about it. And we presented these ideas that we've learned with the rest of the group. And because of our love of Pokemon, even though most of the kids in our group loved Pokemon, somehow we got to pick Japan. And we learned to count to 3 in Japanese. And we learned about Satoshi Tajiri, and we learned about Pokemon, and we learned things about Japanese culture. And at the time, the kids were 5 and 9. So there were some basic things that we learned. I remember checking books out from the library. And then we made a poster. And I still remember we're in like a church, open area building. And Abby and Harrison are standing up at the table with their poster board standing upright. And Abby had some kind of pointer. Now she's 5 years old. And I remember thinking, she's going to be a great teacher someday. And she was describing things and she was pointing at things and talking about what we learned. And that's what I remember most from that, is just how she thrived in that, having the ability to teach others, right? When we can teach others something, it helps us to learn it even more.
Well, and Harrison, our oldest, was one that he would take on a subject on his own and just dig up everything. That's why I mentioned Toyota, because I remember he got on this kind of this fixation, maybe. I don't know if that's kind of a strong word, but about Toyota and finding out everything about who started it. And,
because we had purchased a new to us Toyota minivan when he was young. And so he became very interested in it. And I remember going to the library, and the book he had reserved online was there. And he jumped up and down because the history of the Toyota Motor Corporation book was where he was about 8, if I remember right. And so, homeschooling gave us the opportunity to allow him to pick a topic like that and dive into it. School divides, that's what I was going with my prior topic when I lost my train of thought. School divides learning into subjects, English, math, social studies, science. It's very specific. We're going to learn this now, and we're going to learn this now. But in reality, when you learn something, it's not easily categorized into a specific subject. Natural learning and, learning about the history of Toyota is learning about cars. He started subscribing to Motor Trend magazine. Again, this is an 8-year-old.
Well, that was somebody gave him I think my sister or something gave him a subscription to it.
He had an
something like that.
interest in that.
Yeah.
He's reading this book on the history of the company. I mean, there's reading, there's English, there's history, there's social studies. There's so many different elements going on there. And, like I was saying before, the school is set up in a way that we can facilitate learning for a lot of kids at one time. And there's a place for that. And there's a reason that the school came about the way it is. And yet there are challenges to that. And there are components of it that do not work in our kids' best interest, like a child who wants to really delve into one area and spend the time on it. They often don't have that opportunity to. And to be able to explore that and not have to worry about, I got to, get my math homework done. I got to get all this, done at the same time too. And so, how do you do this if your kids are in school? Because this is like we talk about with all our skills with parenting. It doesn't matter if your child is a newborn, if they're 15, or even if they're 25. We can always foster improved relationships with our kids, and we can always improve on that love of learning and that ability to follow through.
Well, I would think it's, again, it goes back to parent involvement and then being able to, take what they're learning at school and steer it towards some type of a passion of theirs. If they're learning about I don't know, German culture or something, but they've been given something to read about it, you might find a video on it, or to also give them because they learn better by watching sometimes than reading. You might do something like that and then help them to do the reading part of it. But it would enhance it by doing something that they have more interest in, but on that same subject or something. Does that? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
it does. And also remembering that if we take over this interest and we're like, oh, you need to do this and you need to read this and let's play this game now and let's do this, you're kind of messing with that natural curiosity and that natural rhythm.
Yeah.
Providing the resources, giving them the opportunity. I would often check books out. Our middle child got interested in poetry, and I went to the library and checked out some different poetry books and gave her the opportunity to look at them. I didn't coerce her to read any of them. I simply said, here are some books. We gave the opportunity to look at them herself or look at them together. And maybe I returned them 3 weeks later, and maybe she didn't even open one of them. But giving those opportunities to them, we have to give back our kids an opportunity to take charge of themselves in their life. Our kids are being told what to do, when, how, with whom, from a very young age. And so it's no wonder that they are seeking a sense of control. And this can come out as a behavior challenge, a kid goofing around in school, not getting things done. They want a sense of control in their lives. Why else do kids, when they get older, they skip school or do other things? They want to decide how they're spending their time. And so they need that opportunity to. And so, like I said, making sure their life is not overscheduled, that even if it's something, they really want to do, if you don't have some downtime, if you can't take a day off and just have pajama day or be able to step away from things for a little while, it's going to quickly lead to increased stress and anxiety, burnout, and, all kinds of
tears at the relationship too of a parent and a child, because they want the control and you're not giving it to them. They're going to take it or try to take it, and which causes a rift between the two of you,
feel a sense of control in our lives. And so having those opportunities to do that. I remember you saying to me one time, I think with our oldest, when I don't know how old he was, 8 or 10, shouldn't you be assigning him things to read? And I remember thinking, he loves reading. I don't want to ruin that.
Yeah. Well, like I tried to do with Abby,
He loves it. And so I didn't feel the need, he joined a book club when he was around that age. And so he read the books that were part of the book club because he enjoyed doing that. He went on to go to community college and read the required reading. Yet at such a young age, no, I didn't want to. A kid who
Yeah.
already loved reading and loved going to the library, I would suggest maybe new things or, check something out that could be outside of his interest to expand things. Yet forcing him to do something seemed counterproductive to me.
Well, and that kind of goes along, like overall, what I see with the childhood learning, which I find amazing, is because we've given our children this opportunity, because we have let them lead us in how they wanted to learn. I've been amazed, especially by our youngest now, who is doing so much stuff on her own and coming down and she'll come down and tell me about this, well, like something she programmed, she's made up a game, a program game. And I'm like, you did that. How did you? She said, well, I watched some YouTube and I read some stuff and they want to learn and they do it. They explore on their own. There was no, I didn't push her to do that. I didn't even know she was doing that. And, that was amazing to me. And it just kind of tells me, well, one, I give kudos to you, Gina, because when I remember when we started this homeschooling thing, I thought, oh my gosh, this is voodoo, because both of us come from that background of having to go to school, when,
My
all
mother
that,
was a teacher,
all
college
that, yeah,
couple.
all that structure that we went through and all that, it was really hard for me to take this on and go, we're not doing school. How are they going to learn? All those doubts and questions and fears even came out. But over time, when they do those things like that, like coming down with something they've learned on their own, and it's amazing, especially for, I think the first time she did that, she was pretty young. I mean, I can't remember, probably maybe 10 or 11, maybe. And I'm thinking, my gosh, I can't imagine anybody in school that's already got that kind of talent or has been, I don't know. It just,
Had the opportunity to
yeah,
pursue that.
And so it has really shown me over and over, because I mean, she wasn't the only one. I mean, Abby did it, Harrison did it, all, they all did these amazing things on their own, just because they were curious, and their curiosity took them into a place of exploring and wanting to do something. And it just, I don't know, it just find it amazing again, and really helped kind of prove me wrong, I guess, in a way, which I'm happy to say that's good to prove me wrong in that area, because it has paid off. The toughest part, I think, especially with our youngest, is she has a hard time seeing that where she is with stuff, and how smart and talented she is, because she's being told by some of her online friends of how they go to school, and she feels like that's supposed to be the way you're supposed to do it, but yet she's doing it on her own, and she just can't see it because it's not set up in that structure like she's been told that's the way to do it.
And at 14, don't we all question
Well,
our
yeah.
lives and what things look like, and we're uncomfortable, and when you have an anxiety disorder on top of it, yeah, that questioning is natural and normal. Our oldest went through questioning at around that same age, 15 or so, of, Mom, what have you done to me in my education? And it doesn't look like what other kids look like, and frustration. And he went on to community college and he got his associate's degree, and he's moving up in the company he works for. And reflecting back, he's, it's just kind of that questioning time. So no matter what's going on, when kids are teenagers, that's part of their brain development, is to question and challenge and doubt the way things have been done. And that's part of their learning. And we
Well,
need
that's
to
critical thinking too.
we need to step out of the way and taking that personally, and realize that's part of the process of what they're going through.
Well,
Um,
and they've also each one of our kids so far is really followed their passion into their job, which to me is a I mean, I know Abby still has a ways to go because there's a lot to she loves what she does, but has, there's some things about the job itself is not as,
oh, but she has an interest in dogs and a love of dogs, and she's working for her aunt, who's a dog trainer and runs a business with dog boarding and training. And she's working there and living with a friend on her own, 3
yeah,
hours and functioning.
yeah.
Is
So
this what she's going to do forever? Who knows? I mean, our son's assistant manager at Best Buy, is he going to do that forever? Who knows? I mean, how many different careers have you had, Don?
no, don't let's not go down that road.
I mean, we all change
No,
our
no,
life
I know.
and we change our path. You got a degree in business, wanting to go into marketing, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? And you wound up in food service sales, and then you got tired of traveling.
Well,
And
even deeper than that, when I was really small, my goal in life was to be a car designer. Okay. I loved everything about cars. Well, you remember I have that scrapbook of where I used to cut out all the latest cars each year, And, then I ended up in web design. So I was in design. It just wasn't necessarily about cars, but so, in a way, I kind of followed my passion in a way, from something when I was really, well, now that I think about it, if it's okay, um, I remember as a kid, raised Catholic, mom always wanted us to be a priest and all this stuff. I didn't really want to be a priest except for the sermons. I wanted to be the one. I loved the priest that would give a cool sermon and would talk to us, And now I'm at a place where I'm working on being a speaker. So I guess in a way,
didn't you
what's
say
that?
stand up at home and give sermons?
Standing behind this big, we had a window fan. It was big, but I was small at the time, so it was probably not as big as I am imagining now. But I would stand and it'd be right at the right level. It was like a pulpit for me or something, and I would preach the heck out of myself, Mom,
Fail.
what's that?
Reach into the fan.
That's right. That's right. No, anyway, sorry, a little drift off there, but it does talk about passions, and I think that's a really important part of what we're talking about is this idea that we're letting them develop their passion of what they like and want to be and do and all that. And I think that's
Allowing
really
them to
important.
change their mind and allowing it to look differently along the way, and not putting our expectations on it.
Yeah.
I was trying to make the point that you evolved and you went into different careers
Yeah.
and you did different things until you got where you are now. And that's okay. That's part of your journey. I had a
Yeah.
love of as a kid, and I was doing things from elementary school. We did a news podcast that aired on like the local TV channel, and I was on the writing crew of that. And then we moved. I moved a couple times growing up to different school districts, and I remember having a writing class in about 6th grade. And then I didn't have as many opportunities in high school with writing, and somehow that got put on the shelf. And because my education was so focused on science and math and going to college, and there wasn't a big push for writing in the 80s. The SATs didn't require any writing essays, and I wrote one paper in 4 years of high school. And there just wasn't a lot of time spent with writing. And so I found my way into the field of occupational therapy, and yet I've had to write as an occupational therapist. I have to write treatment notes and treatment plans, and I have continued to write privately on my own and journal, and then found my way into blogging and writing on parenting and all these different topics. So it's always been there, and seeing it evolve. Speaking on hobbies and interests, we grew up with homeschooling our children and learning about different styles of homeschooling, and one is called unschooling. So it's essentially not following a structured curriculum or pattern, that learning doesn't have to look like school. And so kind of along the lines of some of the things we've talked about. And I would go to some conferences. And I remember when my kids were still pretty young, hearing some grown unschoolers. So kids who had followed this, non-traditional way of learning. And now they were teens or young adults. And someone asked them, what are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? And I remember one kid saying, well, not be seeing what a hobby was per se, because they had followed the interest in what they enjoyed, what we might call a hobby, and they had found paid work along those lines. So every aspect of their life, for the most part, was something that they really enjoyed doing. Now, sure, there are components of our life that we don't enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't learn to, clean up after yourself and do things you might not otherwise like to do. Yet I just remember being struck with the fact that this kid was, understood the concept of a hobby, yet was answering the question in an unusual way, because they had had the time to explore and do things that they enjoyed. And so they couldn't separate it out from their day-to-day life. And I was inspired at this time by all these kids, because I went to 13 years of public school with kindergarten and went on to college, because that's what you did when you graduated high school. It was not really another option. And my dad had worked his way through college, while being married and raising children. He attended night school for almost 10 years before he got his degree. And so he had instilled in us the importance of completing your education, and he was going to pay for half of it. We could not get married while we were in college. This was a stipulation.
I didn't know that.
It was based on his experience and the struggle, the challenge it was for him doing that. Yet he did it. And so, we've grown up in that environment. And so stepping outside of my comfort zone when it came to educating our own children, looking at new ways of doing things. And, I wrote this post because I've learned so much from them, and they have kind of led the way. We all learn differently. All kids are differently. And we parent all the kids differently. There's no way to parent two kids exactly the same. I mean, even if you have twins, they have different personalities. I have some friends with twins. They have different strengths and weaknesses. One might be more introverted. One might be more extroverted. One might be more hands-on. One might be, the quiet kid who wants to sit back and read. And we need to honor their differences and where they're at, and really work towards their strengths. When we focus on the negative and what they're doing wrong, think the law of attraction, you're going to put more energy into that. But how can we focus on the strengths and what they enjoy? Something as simple as a family movie night. If you've got multiple kids in the house, you rotate each week, and a different person gets to pick what you're watching. Maybe you have educational movie once a month or whatever, and you rotate the topic depending on what they're interested in. There's so many different ways of incorporating their interests, and it's important we stop and give our kids some focused time, even if it's for 15 minutes and they want to explain to us for the 100th time about all the Pokemon. And there are a lot. They might have absolutely no interest in Pokemon and be bored out of our mind by this. Yet we can say, you know what? My kid is interested in this. I'm going to learn a little something about it. I'm going to step into their world for a few minutes. And I can set a limit on it. I can say, okay, you know what? I've got to get something else done. I've got to start dinner or whatever. But I've got 15 minutes, and put your phone down. Goodness, put your phone down and give them the attention, or say, I can't do it right now, but I want to hear more about this. Can you tell me about this over dinner or after dinner before I read you a story? And give them that opportunity to share with you what they're learning, because we learn so much more when we can tell back what we've learned, and when we have the opportunity to share what we're learning. And speaking to the different traits our kids have and how they can be very challenging when they're young. The next thing in my list of things I've learned is persistence is challenging to parents, but it's valued by employers. So our oldest, I used to tell him, if you look up persistent in the dictionary, your picture is there. And when he's insisting on that we're loading the dishwasher wrong, or how we're supposed to do things at home, or when he was young, it was challenging. And yet, when he was doing his Eagle Scout project, he worked for a local high school, and they wanted the side of they kind of had a hill alongside their football stadium, and they wanted a big rock mural of their school letters or whatever it was. And they had a plan of how they wanted it. And so he had to, get funding for donations for the types of rocks and the paint and all the materials needed to do this project. And I think you took him around to some of these places.
Yeah, well, he's I think a natural born salesman in a way, but he got the rocks, he got the paint, he got everything donated that was needed. But I mean, talk about persistent. I love the story with that, because that when we were, like you said, it was this circle. We had to first dig out this circle in the hill and then put rocks down.
12 feet, more 15 feet round.
Probably 15. Yeah, it was big because they wanted the 2 letters of the school's name up there. And we had to paint, he wanted to paint the school colors. It was blue and white, I think it was. And so we were able to get somebody to loan us a paint sprayer to do it with. And talk about persistence. Okay, so we got this sprayer, but the place we had to plug it in was like up the hill and kind of back some way. So we had to use like 3 or 4 extension cords to get to this painter, which took the power down on it. We didn't realize. And so when we turned it on, it would like trickle out. Like, I mean, I think I could probably pee harder than this thing sprayed out at that moment. And I remember it was late. It was like about 7 or 7:30, and it started getting dark. And he's up there with this thing barely coming out and trying to and I'm going, Harrison, we need to stop. We'll have to figure this out. No, Dad, we need to get this done. And he's up there just trickling out the water. I mean, the water barely pouring out of there. And I was like,
and painted it on.
And I had to just say, no, Harrison, stop. In fact, I turned the machine on because the power was stretched out so much that it didn't give enough power to do it. So we had to do a little different technique, but and we got it painted. But not that night. I mean, he was going to stay there. He was going to paint each one of those rocks with that little trickle of water, and there were a lot of rocks.
I also remember he went somewhere to get a donation, and he just persisted so long that they initially were not going to, or didn't. I can't remember the exact story, but there was some. It was a local hardware store or something that he just persisted so much that I remember them saying to him about, you're just really persistent, aren't you?
Yeah, he never did. He would not give up. When we sold, I remember when he would sell popcorn. That was another thing he really enjoyed, going around, and we would take a wagon and load it full of popcorn and walk around neighborhoods. And I remember this one guy, because I had to teach all the scouts how to sell, and I told them that if you can't sell a box of something, then just ask them if they'd be willing to donate $1 or 50 cents or $2 or whatever. And there was this one guy, I remember him walking up the driveway, and the guy had met him about halfway down the driveway, and he's telling him about the product and asking if he wanted, and the guy said, no, I'm not going to buy any. And he turned around before Harrison could say anything more, and Harrison followed him up and said, excuse me, sir, and he's tapping on him going, could you just give $1? Could you at least do that? And I think the guy ended up piling a 5 out and giving it to him, because he just, he was so persistent and very tactful and polite about it, but he didn't let him get away without something, So anyway.
I remember you telling them that, they're not selling popcorn, they're selling the Scouts and what they do in the organization, you taught those kids a lot of skills that can be useful in so many areas, even if you don't work in sales, just so many areas of life and as an adult. And so these, kids we often label as challenging, spirited, that have these intense qualities, intense energy or persistence, or you can come up with all kinds of labels, and they can feel exhausting to you as a parent, especially when they're young. And yet these qualities are the things that can make exceptional employees or entrepreneurs in different areas of life, like being persistent.
Well, we talked, you and I talked about that we wanted to raise our kids to be independent, which I think most parents do. And that takes a lot different than what most people think. But I remember, when they would question us, or we'd ask them to do something, and then they'd question us as to why or whatever. And we get a little frustrated because we didn't grow up with that kind of opportunity. And it was hard for us to deal with that, even though we knew, and we would let them express and ask questions. But it was really tough because we didn't grow up that way. We didn't grow up, being allowed to necessarily.
We're told. We did what we were told. And I remember my mother saying, when you are an adult, when you have your own house and your own family, then you can make up the rules and you can decide, what to do. And I remember standing there like, wait a minute, I have my own house and my own family, and I'm the adult. Yet my kids are questioning, and
they're making the rules, darn it.
And so it was a new avenue, and yet I wanted to give them that voice to feel heard and to be able to explore and discover. And I had great parents, and
yeah, I did too. I mean, they were doing the best they knew how, the way they knew how, and we both had parents that were there with love, even though they, some of the ways they did it weren't maybe the best way or something, but they did.
We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes, and we're all coming from different places and different times and, generations and all of that. And so, there were things that I wanted to do differently. And, like I said before, all kids are differently. So I'm just going to read a few more of these things that I've learned from my kids and my cats. The cat is rubbing on the microphone right now. Hiking heals the soul. The view at the top of the mountains is worth climbing past the danger sign. The first time at the beach is the best time. Going to the beach is even more fun with children. Digging in the sand is calming and satisfying. Straws kill sea turtles. Don't let people tell you that you cannot hike 20 miles in one hike. If you love hiking, don't allow people to convince you that you should be a swimmer or a biker. Learning to ride a bike is not a requirement for adulthood. School changes how you look at learning. Life experience is more meaningful than a college degree. Don't waste your time trying to be something that you are not. And so on that note, just giving you all something to think about, we're going to talk more on this topic intermittently as we do our podcast. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and your questions, especially speaking to these ideas with people who kids go to traditional school, parents who both work full time. Although for most of my children's upbringing, I have worked at least part-time outside the home. I'm worried the cat's going to knock things over right now. But we'd love to hear more from you so that we can expand on this topic. So that is our podcast for today. Like I said, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to leave a comment, give us feedback, write a review, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Please share it with others. You can learn more about Don and I and our parent coaching program, the work we're doing with the sandwich generation, our parent communication classes, and our upcoming workshops at focusedhealthyfamily.com. From there, you can read the blogs, find all our podcasts, including the Tuesday Tips podcast that we air each week that are a short 15 minutes or less podcast. You can find us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, Instagram, Gina at Focused Healthy Family. And remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future
and yours.
Take care.